you're doing well. Hope you're having a really good week. Welcome to this week's core message. We are in the middle of a series called Fruit and Fibre, and it's just us having conversations about character through these contrasting ideas. If you've missed the previous weeks, don't worry, they are all available for you, so you can go back and watch them whenever you've got time. But for this week, we are talking about cancel culture. Now, cancel culture is something that you're probably already familiar with, but just so that we are all on the same page before we move forward, it refers to a popular practice of withdrawing support from either individuals or organisations after they've said something or done something that's seen as objectionable or offensive. Now, if you've read the news, or especially if you've been around social media lately, I'm sure you've seen tons of examples of this happening, where people in positions of influence and power or visibility have said something, made comments, or sometimes done something, behaved in a way that is seen as offensive, then receive this barricade of total backlash of mass petitions of people calling them to be cancelled, and to see their kind of work being boycotted and see them removed and excluded from the position that they're in, as well as see them kind of socially excluded from the life that they were living before. Now, what's really interesting about cancel culture as a phenomenon is that it comes with this peer pressure, where unless you sign the petition, or unless you comment or you pledge your allegiance to that cause to see this person cancelled, you often can face yourself the threat of being seen as affiliating with the offensive views or ideas or actions. It's almost like unless you're willing to join in, then you're seen as being on the same side as the person being cancelled out, so to speak, as if you agree with what they've said or what they've done. And there can be this huge amount of peer pressure to join in, and it can have consequences, even to the people just affiliated with the people being cancelled out, let alone the real life ramifications and consequences for the people at the receiving end of cancel culture. Now, cancel culture is something that usually is most visible and obvious online, but I think it can easily be applied to our everyday life. The basic principles of cancel culture are seen pretty much across our society, in schools, in workplaces, social clubs, wider families, any kind of social settings and communities. Because cancel culture basically seeks to mute and to erase any voice or opinion that does not agree with the mass majority. It seeks to exclude and cancel out anybody and remove from the community anyone who's seen as offensive, anyone who's seen as objectionable to the majority. Now, whether it's online or in real life, this can have some real significant ramifications for the people at the other end of cancel culture, for the people who are receiving this kind of behaviour, where jobs can be lost, social contacts can be lost, people can become really isolated, and obviously mental health can take a big dip as well when people are receiving this kind of treatment and are being excluded and essentially cancelled out by their community in one way or another. Ultimately, the issue with cancel culture is that it dehumanises the person at the receiving end. Whether they are right or wrong, whether they've done the right thing or the wrong thing, it dehumanises them and sees them as nothing more but the viewpoint that they hold, or the behaviour that they've done, the actions that they've taken. Now, if you are a follower of Jesus, then that should be a problem for you, because us as Christians, believe that humans have intrinsic value and worth beyond the sum of our actions. That because God made us, because He created us, because He has made us in His image, we have worth and value regardless of whether we get it right or wrong, whether we say the right thing or the wrong thing, whether we do the right thing or the wrong thing. We have value and worth as humans because of the person who created us. And therefore, anything that dehumanizes somebody else should be an issue for us. But as I said, with cancel culture, especially when it's in these smaller communities like workplaces and schools and things, it can be subtle, and because of the peer pressure, we can be left in this awkward situation where we're made to choose a side, where we're either inviting someone or not, whether we're including them or not, whether we're affiliating with them or not. And this is why I wanted us to have a chat about cancel culture and to have a look at it together, so that as and when those situations arise, we feel a bit better prepared and a bit better informed, and we've thought about the way that we want to respond, so that we're not thrown in the moment as and when those situations arise. Now, as followers of Jesus, we tend to look to the example of Jesus. So I wanted to just bring to your attention a moment in Jesus' life when he encounters cancel culture. And I want to bring your attention to a guy called Zacchaeus. Now, this guy, we can find his story in a book called Luke. It's in the New Testament. You can find that there and you can read it along if you want to. It's in chapter 19, verses 1 to 10. And Jesus encounters this guy called Zacchaeus, and he is definitely at the receiving end of cancel culture. Just for a little bit of context, at this time, the area that this happens in is called Judea. So it was a part of Israel where Jewish people had lived, and they saw it as their land, as their country. But the Roman Empire had taken over this area, and it was now under Roman rule. So basically, they were now being ruled by the Roman Empire, but they still had this strong identity as Israel, as the Jewish people definitely saw it as their land, as their country. And Zacchaeus had collaborated with the Roman Empire, with the Romans, and got himself a position as a tax collector, which means that he was exploiting his own people, the Jews, and then financially benefiting the Roman Empire. He was collecting tax from the Jewish people and sending it back to the Roman Empire. So as you can imagine, he's seen as a traitor, as someone who has collaborated with the enemy. He is not a popular guy. And we see in these verses that he's made some money doing this. He's maybe charged people a bit extra and pocketed some money, and he's basically exploited his own people who are already being oppressed by this point. So he's not really an easy guy to like at this point. Now Jesus encounters Zacchaeus, and by this point Jesus is already having a bit of a following, and there's a lot of attention on him. People are watching him, and they are looking and seeing who is he associating with, who is he affiliating with, and I'm sure Jesus is fully aware of this. Now, associating with somebody like Zacchaeus is definitely not going to be good for Jesus' reputation, because as I said, Zacchaeus is definitely at the end of cancel culture, where his own community have excluded him. They don't want anything to do with him. He's hated and despised and seen as the ultimate enemy. And it's kind of hard to like a guy who has financially benefited from the oppression of his own people. He's not somebody who is easy to portray as the good guy. If this was a film, he'd definitely be the baddie in it. But Jesus encounters him, and he makes some value statements. He encounters Zacchaeus, and instead of choosing to ignore him or exclude him or just to not affiliate with him, he makes a big point to invite him to dinner with him. He chooses to respond to Zacchaeus with kindness. He chooses to be good and do good to this man who he doesn't owe anything to, but he chooses to treat him as an equal, as a fellow human. And even though there's tons of people looking, all the religious leaders, the people in power are looking in on this situation, and they can't believe Jesus is doing this. They hate these guys. They can't imagine why Jesus would want to spend time with him. Regardless of that, Jesus chooses to respond to Zacchaeus with kindness, and he treats him as a fellow human and has a meal with him. Now we don't really know what Jesus and Zacchaeus talked about when they were having this dinner, but what we do see that even by the end of these 10 verses, that Zacchaeus has a total turnaround. That moment with Jesus, where Zacchaeus is invited and included, where he is seen as a human being of worth and value beyond the sum of his actions, where he's treated with kindness and respect that he doesn't deserve, is more powerful than the years of cancel culture that he has experienced up until that point. And it's enough to produce a U-turn in the way that he chooses to live life going forward. Encountering Jesus and his character, that kind of kindness that is countercultural, is life transforming for him. And Jesus is still transforming lives with the same nature, with the same kindness, with the same character today. And for better or for worse, he chooses to use us to do that, to encounter people, to demonstrate of something of who he is to those that we see and that we are surrounded by. Which is why I think it'd be a good idea for us to take a minute now to speak to Jesus about the people in our lives. Speak to him about the Zacchaeuses in your life, the people that are hard to be kind to, those that you maybe feel don't deserve it, or those that maybe the public opinion is saying should be cancelled out. Speak to Jesus about them and ask him to speak to you about how you can respond in kindness instead of cancel culture. If you are new to praying, that's totally fine. Just speak to Jesus about the people in your life and ask him to speak to you. And if you've already prayed tons of times, then I trust that you know what you're doing. Allow the Spirit of God to speak to you and to challenge you in a way that you can respond with that godly character, with that kind of countercultural kindness to the people facing cancel culture in your life. Let's pray. Hi, welcome back. I hope you've had a chance to reflect on kindness and cancel culture and to speak to Jesus about the people in your life. As always, we want to end these core messages with something that we can action that week. And for this week, it's pretty obvious. Look out for the signs of cancel culture in your community when you go to your social setting, whether it's work or school or meals with your family or whatever it looks like. Look out for the signs of cancel culture and make an active decision to choose to respond in kindness instead. Resist the pressure of public opinion and look to Jesus for the way in which you choose to respond to others this week. I hope you found that helpful. If you want to talk about it more, if you've got questions or you just want to chat about the things that we've been reading about or talking about, get in touch with somebody within our community and we'd love to talk that over with you. And as and when God says something or does something through you, as and when you're choosing to respond in kindness in the face of cancel culture, feel free to share that with us as well so that we can all be encouraged by the things that He's doing in and through you. Well, I hope that you have a brilliant week. Go well, and I'll see you soon.